Waiting on you.
Gotcha. Now I'm going live now. All right, cool. Thank y'all for joining us this week as we welcome you to Northwest Austin Council. We do this thing every Sunday between 6 and 8. Little technical difficulties, sometimes those arise. We are waiting on the congressman to arrive. Um, but today, we have a very, very special treat for y'all because this is the end of Women's History Month. So we brought a very fascinating woman, one that actually helped build a lot of what you see today on the West Side. So this is going to be a real good conversation. I'm looking forward to it. This is my first time probably being not in her presence, but being able to have conversation with her about her efforts on the West Side. So I'm really looking to gain a lot from this, and I'm hoping that everybody listening is as well. And as you know, we have various ways you can interact with the show. We got the Facebook, we got the YouTube, we got the Zoom. If you're on the Zoom, you already know. Just jump in, man. You got some questions, some comments, with anything that you want to add to the conversation, do that. YouTube, Facebook, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, comment, share. Let people know what we're doing over here because we got something that's we building and it's absolutely authentic and it's ready for the West Side to listen to be absorbed, and for them to grow from, because this is West Side people talking West Side things.
Right here on the West Side.
Yes, sir. Oh, look, that may be the congressman right there. So, good timing for all because we just starting up, and typically, I like to say, what's going on, Steve? But he ain't in the seat right now. So I'm gonna just jump right in with Mary Nelson because we ain't gonna keep her waiting too much longer. She's been very patient. First and foremost, I'm disrespectful because that's Dr. Mary Nelson. Yeah, it's Dr. Mary Nelson. And so, in that regard, I would like to go ahead because the congressman is on the way in. So Dr. Mary Nelson, the West Side. What does the West Side mean to you? Because you've done so many great things already for it.
Well, I've lived here on the West Side now over 50 years, so I guess it's my home.
Okay,
and
everything.
The first days I came in here in 1965 was when the riot started. So the very day I was here, I had just gotten in the day before the riot started, and I like to say it's been a riot ever since. But the West Side is an amazing amalgam of a lot of things. I like to look at the glass half full, at the best things here on the West Side. There is a sense of community.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of neat people who quietly do things and don't get recognized for it. And there are a lot of really interesting places and landmarks here on the West Side that probably are forgotten because of all the changes that have happened. So I'm happy to be a long-term resident of the West Side, and to be a part of what's going on.
That's absolutely. Thank you. So what you got, the PhD, the EDD? What's going on with the doctor?
Well, like Congressman here, I went to a graduate program called Union Graduate School.
Okay.
And where you get to design your own kind of thesis, your own kind of project, and to do it at distance learning. And my project was an attempt to look at trying to change the public school system, and was involved here in Chicago in a thing called EduCon, where we were trying to, it was before all the school councils, long time ago, before all the school councils and things were set up. And we were trying to figure out how we could, as a community-based kind of way, how we could help make the schools more effective and better. And obviously we haven't really succeeded. We didn't really succeed, but it was the impetus that got school councils in the mix, saying that decisions need to be made closer to where the action is, and did push some good things that were going on.
Okay, that's beautiful. Congressman, how you feeling today? You doing a whole lot of work.
Tired, I bet.
I'm doing good.
Okay.
I'm just delighted to be in the same room with one of the most delightful people I have ever worked with and have ever known, whose family have contributed so much to the West Side. I guess I met Mary shortly after they got here.
Yeah, a long time ago.
I had only been here a few years. I came in 1961. And I was thinking of one of the first things that I got involved with them was the very first alternative school.
Right.
That I never knew anything about.
Cam Academy.
Cam Academy.
Right.
Christian Action Ministry Academy. And that was a forerunner for many of the alternative school activities and networks that developed ultimately to the point where there's still a whole bunch of them. But Cam Academy was the first one that I ever knew anything about. Right there on Madison Street.
And we started simply because, and I was the first principal of it.
Wow.
And we started simply because 50% of the kids in high school on the Westside were dropping out. So only 50% graduated.
What was the reason they were dropping out?
Well, we decided that we had a bunch of, we brought together, we being Bethel New Life at that time, brought together a number of groups together and say, what is it that's needed in place of what's not working? Okay. And one of the things we decided was that we needed to try some things that might work before we said, okay, this is what we want. Because too often we just protest.
Oh, man. Tell me about it.
We don't have any idea what we want in place of what we
Absolutely.
want.
Okay. I hear that.
So Cam Academy started as a way to try and figure out how do you get kids who've already dropped out, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, who've already, or 16-year-olds who've dropped out, and what works with them. And so we had fun. We didn't have any rules and regulations. We had fun in trying to figure out. We taught math equations by shooting craps.
Oh man, come on now. You know what? I always say, so our community is non-traditional, but we continue to try to enhance it with traditional methods.
That's right.
I love that idea.
And
I love that idea.
We had access to the big booksellers' warehouse, and so here were 18-year-olds who couldn't read, who could hardly read, and so we said, you go in and find the books you want to read.
Nice.
And then let's work on that.
Come on, I like that. What happened? Where does this model go?
These really violent ones, you know, with the pictures of somebody with a knife and so forth on the cover of them. And we discovered but here's how you discover things. We discovered so we decided we would read them into a tape recorder, and they could put earphones on and be reading along with the script.
Wow.
And hear it reading.
Wow.
And one time the tape recorder came out and stopped, and they went on reading. So and they were able to figure out what happened in the book. So there are things you learn then to figure out how to help make things happen. And part of that is just because people had given up on their chance to really learn to read.
That's amazing.
Well, but the real deal is that many of those individuals ended up having successful lives.
I can imagine.
Being able to get themselves a job, raise a family, raise their children. I see some of them still. I run into.
Yeah, so do I.
Wow.
Where was Cam Academy located?
I think we had several locations. We started out on Flournoy, 4900 on Flournoy. It was a big old warehouse building. First of all, we started out on the second floor of the CAM Center, which was at Pulaski and Madison. And it was the old bank building that was there. And it was the second floor of that. And we were there on the second floor when Martin Luther King was killed.
Wow.
And I can remember, because we had school that day. And I can remember the students just walking out of the school that afternoon and going down Madison Street to join the crowds that were out there. So that's where we started. And then we moved on to Flournoy. We had a bigger space. We had probably, this was a non-public school. I mean, we didn't have, so probably we had 100 and 2,500 kids.
Wow. Your name comes up a lot in organizing spaces. So you're a big deal around here as it relates to getting people together to move on their causes. Why is that so important? And how did you develop that type of acumen to get people together to move on what they were looking to move on?
Well, I think the thing is, when we were a community development corporation, so
Okay.
when you're trying to do housing, when the banks weren't willing to make loans on the west side, okay, and we joined Gail Senkata and other activists and did a challenge to the banks, of the Community Reinvestment Act challenge to the banks. So when there's a bump, you can't do what needs to be done because of some structure. Then you got to organize and deal with it. And it's like, people were in the water and were help, I'm drowning. And you dive in and try and bring somebody in, and then help, I'm drowning, and there's somebody else, and help, I'm drowning, and somebody else. And finally you get tired and you say, we got to go up the river and figure out who and what is pushing them in and do something about that.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole reason. When you bump into what the problems are, what the issues are that are blocking the things that need to happen, then you got to organize.
Yeah, I hear that. What do you think about today's organization efforts? All right, because one of the things you mentioned a bit earlier is how sometimes we gather and don't know what we want from the outset, which makes it difficult to attain whatever we're looking for. So in terms of today's organizing that's going on, what are your thoughts on it? Do you think that some of these movements we have may be a little bit baseless because we don't know what we want out of it?
Well, I just think organizing is really different. Today.
Okay.
And you look at Black Lives Matter, you look at some of the things that have really come up around McQuan McDonald and the organizing going on around that and so forth, the younger generation. And Black Lives Matter, this notion that you don't have singular strong heads leading everything. You rotate the leadership. You have a more collective sense of things. So the style of organizing
it's a flat structure
is very
now.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the amount of time that it went into organizing. What I mean, organizing requires a tremendous amount of time.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, you can't just do it 9 to 5.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
saying,
yeah.
I just left my office and there were people there today. They've been there. They there now. And you have to put in. And oftentimes people don't seem to be willing to put in the amount of time. Organizers are a strange breed.
Yeah.
I mean, they are pretty much totally immersed in what they do.
I think that's interesting. Funny, someone emailed me this weekend, and when I called him back, he emailed me Saturday, and when I called him back Saturday, he's like, "Oh man, I thought you was gonna call me Monday." It's like, for what? Because I'm essentially the job that I have is as a community organizer.
Right.
And I feel as if we've turned most of these positions, into Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type of roles, it doesn't work that way. So I thought, so in what you're saying, I'm like, no, man, it's okay. It's Saturday, like it's all right. Good thing he didn't want me to do anything though, so that made it better. It was more or less I just connected them into some things, but. To hear him say that was interesting. I was just like, Now if it's Sunday, sometimes I like to have my Sundays to myself, but I find myself doing things on Sundays as well. What's up, Steve?
Well, I know Mary asked me, she said, Steve, I know you have a lot of questions for me. And I always do. But I always think about Mary and the time she organized with former President Jimmy Carter.
Wow.
Had him come to Chicago.
Wow.
And work on the west side with Habitat for Humanities. And the homes are still there that they built some 40 years ago almost.
Yeah.
Mary, if you don't mind.
Where is it?
It's off of Kinsey and not Keeler. Is it Keeler? No. It's a block. It's one block.
Yeah, Monroe. Is it on Monroe?
No,
Maple.
the first
Miracle
one.
on Maple Street.
Miracle on Maple?
Right.
Maple?
Maple Street.
Not the first, not the ones he built in.
Maple.
On Maple.
Oh, Maypole.
Yeah.
Okay, a Maypole.
Thank
Okay.
you, Congressman.
I thought they were on Kinsey. I don't know why.
No, but it was an amazing thing because Jimmy Carter, well, it all kinds of, when Habitat comes in those days, that when Jimmy Carter was around, the press wanted to talk to him. He said, "No, I can't talk to you now. I'll talk to you after work is over."
Yeah.
And he did his carpentry work, and
Wow.
and Oprah came and for the press gave a
Of
little
course.
hammering inside.
But
But I'll never forget when we were almost done. In 1 week, we built 3 houses.
Okay.
We had the foundations done, but we built 3 houses. And that I can remember Rosalind Carter, when the day before we were supposed to be done, calling up the Commonwealth Edison and People's Gas and saying, "You just have to get out here and make the connections."
Right, right.
Who
gonna turn her down?
Heaven and earth to get it done by the next day, so that we could really complete the houses.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I like them both.
It's amazing.
I got to know Rosalind as well as I did Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the time when I kind of started going into Washington, lobbying with the health centers. And I never will forget, we went to the White House one time, and we wasn't aware of the way, and Jimmy Carter had his cue sheets and all. And so they had us all lined up, and we'd walk in, and he'd say, "Well, Danny, how you doing? How's Chicago? Why they doing and all?" And we were all amazed because he noticed about
That's what's
where
up.
we from.
Right.
That's
We
what's
didn't
up.
know they had a sheet
Yeah.
with everything
Yeah.
written down. So just before you go in, he'd look at your sheet.
Cheat sheet.
Okay.
But we felt we were, oh, wow, hey.
Hey, I've always learned. I learned from one of my
But
mentors.
Robinson used to come to a lot of our meetings.
Mhm.
And I mean, she'd come and sit through the meetings. We were talking healthcare and mental health and that stuff she was really interested in. So yeah, I like them. A lot of folks say he didn't do too well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a mentor that always told me never let your leader go into a meeting uninformed. So I think that's pretty cool that they had those cheat sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
But I got to go back before that.
Go ahead.
Okay, when we were just starting, and we had volunteers coming in the summer, and it was called the Prince of Peace Corps, and came and stayed at homes in the community. And that was when King was just beginning his campaign in Chicago.
Mhm.
And so every Saturday we would be marching in Belmont Cragen and the other areas, and so we joined those with our church van and filled with folks. And I will never forget the time when Mahalia Jackson was there, and the night before we had a gathering in the Missionary Baptist Church on Washington Boulevard. And King, you know how he would start low and slow, and he then would build to this crescendo. And he said, his crescendo is we got to tear down these walls of racism and economic distinctions and all the rest. Got to tear down these walls. And we were all just hooping and hollering. And Mahalia Jackson got up and she's saying, "Joshua fit the battle of Jericho and the walls that come tumbling down." And we were all just hooping and hollering and ready to go. And the next day we marched into Belmont Cragen. And Mahalia, I was in the row right behind her. And King was up front with all the pastors. Okay, and arm in arm and walking forward. And all along the side were these people, just hate in their faces and just anger, shouting and screaming at us.
I assume this is before Belmont Cragen became more Latinx.
Yes, right. No, this was a white working class community.
I think were they all? I just feel like all of the stories says
Right.
that white people were just like all over. Okay.
Well, let me finish telling you.
Gotcha.
Because then and Mahalia was on the outside and I was in the row behind her.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were walking along, this big burly white guy with just hate in his spit, the big blob of spit.
Jesus
And
Christ.
it ended on Mahalia's cheek.
Jesus Christ.
And she stopped and we all stopped behind her. She looked at this man and she said, "God bless you, my son."
Wow.
And
Man.
this man shriveled up like Judas Iscariot
Wow.
and went away. And I said, then I know what the power of nonviolence when we move forward.
Wow. Zoom, anybody want to jump in? Got anything to say? Anything to ask?
Well, hey, this is Tiny. And like, so I was in the movement and I was very deaf and I've always been a giant as long as I can remember. And I'm just glad she's still here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Tom.
So I want to know about because what I've heard is you were instrumental in helping get the Bethel New Life going.
Yes.
So how did that come about?
That's an interest.
Say no, I started that.
I'd
Huh?
like to hear it from you.
No,
Talk to me about it. I know it. I mean, I know. You know,
She developed
you developed it, huh?
Bethel New Life.
Oh wow. Okay.
She conceived.
Okay.
Well, no, it was the riots had taken place. You know, there were riots in those 4 years. There were 5 sets of riots in those 4 years between 65 and 69.
Uh-huh.
And the pastors had come together and we're just trying to figure out what do we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we got started, was saying, well, maybe we need to, again, try and do some stuff that is not happening. What are the things that we have that we can work with?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have a lot of power. The riots are going on.
Mm-hmm.
Our community's in a mess. So let's try something. So it was, first of all, deciding that childcare was really important because mamas needed care to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So we turned a number of our church basements into childcare centers. We had 4 or 5 childcare centers, and got the state to do the funding of it, so that then it was affordable. And you know, they all have the rules and regulations. And then then it was starting an employment center, because jobs was the important thing. And so it evolved from one thing to the other. And the rule was that there were 13 churches that came together, but not all of the churches had to agree on what we were going to do. That the ones who wanted to go ahead and do it, but a majority had to agree. And the ones who wanted to go ahead with it would then go ahead with it. And that allowed for some flexibility because not everybody. So when we started saying, we've got to do something about affordable housing. Okay. And then that's when a number of the churches said, well, we don't know how to do it and we don't have any money and it takes too long. And so then a fewer number of us came together and it became, instead of Christian Action Ministry, became, first of all, it was Bethel Housing, and then Bethel New Life.
Okay.
And said, we're going to tackle doing affordable housing.
Okay. So
and a big network of early childhood education centers. I mean,
right.
The big, I mean, just a network. My best buddy's mother ran one at Garfield.
Viola.
You're right. Viola ran the one at
Viola. Frank Lipscomb's mama.
Lipscomb. Her son Frank and I were best of friends. Actually, Frank was the best man at my wedding. Frank and I taught school together. We were the place together. We went to the Black Political Convention in Gary together. We drove to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
To the second meeting. It was a glorious time. I mean, the mood for people who were engaged, people were excited. They were hopeful. They believed that what they were doing would make a difference.
Yes.
and it did make a difference. Trying to put that in sync so that younger people can understand how much of a difference it really did make. And it made political difference, it made social difference. And people who often say nothing happened, they just don't know what was.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What is.
Right. Yeah.
So it's hard to evaluate when you don't have the perspective of what became from what was.
Oh, well, you got to have your history. We need you. We got to get a book from you. We need a book from you because this is history.
Right.
If we and if we don't solidify so that somebody could pick it up and know how some of this stuff was built, then we're just gonna be building aimlessly, because we need foundation.
Right.
Mm.
Well, but one of the neat things that did evolve was a history project, a community history project called Looking Backward to Move Forward. And that's the Sankofa.
Can I would say
Okay. But we collected, so it was people collected pictures and stories from the early days of the Black community on the West Side, and had wonderful. And then we had exhibits of them, and collected some of those stories of the first Black families moving onto the West Side. There was some Eddie South, a world famous jazz violinist, lived there in the 4300 block of Washington Boulevard. And the picture of Tilton Elementary School was there's one little Black boy in the midst of all of these white kids, and that was Eddie South.
Wow.
And so we named a building, the Eddie South building, after him from our community.
Wow.
And there are some really neat stories from those early days of the small but strong Black community that was here and evolved and started, moving west.
Yeah.
3 or 4 physicians came out of Tilton.
Really?
At least 3 or 4.
Wow.
And out of Bethel Church.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those. See, and that's what we need. I would love to see more highlight because Steve and I talk about murals all the time. Those things needs to be captured along the street where we could just drive down and see these things.
Well, 2 things. Let me say that the collection, the Looking Backward to Move Forward collection, is now down in the community's collection down at the library downtown. They have a whole
Harold Washington.
Harold Washington, and so it is for scholars and for people who want to go look and get at those things. It is down there and it is preserved. So I'm really happy for that.
Yeah.
The second thing is when you talked about looking, one of the things we did both at Beth Ann and some of our other buildings was to have wall murals made out of tiny chips of pottery and things. So if you look at Beth Ann, we've got one of them is bricolage is what it's called.
Bricolage?
Bricolage, and it's these pieces. And so we had high school teenagers. We got the summer program working with the artists and the seniors and did this gorgeous mural of flowers with the inside of it. And in the inside of these sunflowers were the faces, the masks of the teens that worked on that project. So it's still there. So there, you can imagine now, this many years later, showing their kids, see, that's me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And absolutely.
And those walls
this is very
have
important.
not been defaced. Nobody has messed those walls up.
Wow. And that's at the Beth Ann building, you said?
At the Beth Ann building.
And that's right here on Division?
Yeah, right here on Division.
Okay, yeah.
And there's another one there that the kids did in the summer, which is a fire hydrant, and then all these kinds of things coming from it, the water coming out of it. And it's ensconced around it are the names of the young people who died too soon.
Oh, man.
Engraved on the edges of it. And then it says, in memory of those who died too soon. And I'll never forget when the mayor's wife came out, when we dedicated it.
Which one?
It
was Daly at the time?
And Maggie Daly. And the kids were there with their that's in the ears when they were wearing these shirts that didn't cover their belly buttons and so forth, and were wiggling around, and they had started out being so angry and so. And when they were there showing the mayor's wife, here's what we did.
Yeah,
You
they
could
were
see
proud.
They were proud.
Absolutely.
And they were able to deal with their anger
Absolutely.
in a way that was constructive.
Oh man, what I love about what I'm hearing is the continued ways of creatively interacting with the community so that we can figure out at least some sort of solution to what we're going through.
Right.
And again, for me, right, just in the time that I'm living in, we have it going on, but I almost feel like we're just short of what we're trying to do. I just get that general sense. I think more often because we're looking at almost stopgap measures, things that are almost intermediary, where it's not long term, and I just feel like they're kind of stopping progress a bit for me.
But I think there's a lot of things going on, and Congressman knows 100 more than I do. But there's a income subsidy thing that's been going on. It's in its second or third year.
Oh, you're talking about Child Care Act?
No, there's $500 a month income subsidy.
The city of Chicago just implemented universal basic income.
This is before the cities. This is a private one. There's a young man doing it.
Yeah. I know about that one too. Yeah.
In West Garfield Park,
yeah.
He's got 500 families.
Yeah. Yep.
They're getting this money and creative stuff. Okay?
Yeah, he's trying to prove the model of universal basic income.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then Reverend Hatch's son, I forget his first name, but he's Biafra. He's got this program for young men who come out of things, and they're doing really exciting things in there. And there's the hatchery. There's the small business kinds of stuff going on. There are a number of things we don't even know about them.
Yeah.
And here's how I think we have to connect
better
and help people understand what is going on, and how we strengthen and support those things to do even more.
Yeah. So something like the hatchery, I was just in the meeting. I can't remember which one, but it was brought up that at the Bronx thing, not the Bronx, the Amazon, the Amazon meeting. So they brought that up about the hatchery, and the young lady brought it up how it came into the community, but didn't anybody know about it, and it's just here now, and so with respect to that, like how can we be more involved on the front end for these things? Because I think that's part of the lack of knowing, because sometimes these things just pop up, like Amazon. Right now, we know, of course, they don't just pop up. There's conversations that's happening in XYZ.
Yeah.
But then the community finds out on the back end, and they're not a part of it, and they feel slighted, and then they just say, "Well, it just popped up." Although it's doing wonderful things for the community in whatever way. But how can we get in front of those things so we can feel more a part of those things?
There's no other way than being organized. I mean, block clubs, I still believe. And every time I talk to people who could help,
right,
I remind them that if people are doing things with each other and doing things themselves, and as ideas pop up or somebody comes up with a good idea, like right now, if you ask, what is it that we need the most in many parts of our community? Mm-hmm. We need affordable housing.
Yeah.
I mean, we need a decent place that people can live and can afford to live there. And I mean, you go on some blocks, for example, in East Garfield and West Garfield and North Lundale. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like Austin is nearly at that level. Mm-hmm. But you may see 2 or 3 houses on a whole block. Mm-hmm. I mean, so who can live on a block that the only house there is their house or one additional house? And so if you're going to rebuild, you got to be able to rebuild that whole block
Right.
and getting enough resource, just private developers and people who could maybe do a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They need the opportunity to protect whatever they're going to invest. I mean, we've tried to make use of opportunity zones and some other
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and developers say, well, we don't really make any money unless we can stabilize and maintain. And so if we don't have a big enough, so the city have to be seriously engaged
Mm-hmm.
in redeveloping those areas.
So, with respect to this, to affordable housing, I like this. I like the idea of like these cargo homes now, right? They're taking the those big steel container homes, right? I call them cargo miniums because you can stack them on each other and create whatever you like to see. But I like the idea of those, and even this tiny home idea. So I think when I think about affordable housing, I always start to think like, why aren't we moving in a direction where those are the options we're looking at instead of consistently trying to build up and just put people, sandwich people on top of one another?
Slowly we are, but building codes have been an issue.
Okay.
And a problem.
Okay.
Unionization
Yeah.
has been an issue and a problem. And it's not a matter of kicking either one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of being comprehensive enough. And you can't do that unless government plays a significant role.
Mm-hmm.
Government has to play. And so it's coming. There are some things now being passed by the city council that never would have been passed 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That it just simply would not. I remember when we couldn't even get speed bumps.
Mm.
The code
Right.
said you can't have speed bumps.
Wow.
Not only on the street, even in the alley. So changes oftentimes are indeed slow.
And it needs to be, make it more possible for partnerships between communities and developers.
Yeah.
In both the design and and we were fortunate at Bethel at that time when we did all those homes on Hamlin.
Mm-hmm.
And because we had a really fabulous suburban builder who was, because of a church commitment, he worked with us, and we designed those homes so they were also energy efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And that we could guarantee that the heating bill would not exceed $300 a year.
Wow. Okay.
Because we were using the technology that he had developed in building homes in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was the codes wouldn't allow us to do it. So we had to organize to get the city to give us an exemption to be able to build those houses to be energy. And they were building them out in the burbs, and they've been building them.
Right.
So it wasn't like there was some safety.
That was right. That was already precedent.
Right.
So it was good on that.
And so that's where you need the organizing, and you need to be working together to make those things happen.
Guess what Mary and I were doing the day Harold Washington died? When we got the word that Harold had gotten sick, we were out looking for lots, places they were to build out. Wow. And Ed Smith called me on the phone and said, Harold Washington is sick and is at Northwest Hospital, Northwestern. You better get downtown. They dividing up the city.
Man.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Man.
But I think as long as communities never give up.
Yeah.
As long as communities keep struggling and moving and working and sometimes doing little bit But innovations, when I see some of the things that are being done right now,
Mm-hmm.
for example, one would never know the stroke of genius the community came up with when St. Anne's Hospital had to close.
Mm-hmm.
And here's all of this space and stuff and all
Whole square block.
that was many people thought sure was going to become a big community eyesore. I mean that hey, what can we do with this? I mean, how can we keep it from happening? Whatever. And then you look at the community intervened. As a matter of fact, Mayor was chairman of the board at the time. And the sisters had been warning and saying, you know, the day is going to come. It's going to happen. We can't keep subsidizing this hospital here. And we didn't have all the money coming in from Medicare and Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act and all of these things that help. And they were actually helping to subsidize that development
Right.
with resources from other hospitals that they owned in other places.
When did St. Anne's close? Around 90 or something like that?
I should know, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was
And
early 90s.
and the thing is, when the sisters they had to close it down, and they were tried to auction it off. Okay? And that's when Bethel said, well, we don't have the money, but we want to, and we tried to go around and get some money. And they tried to auction it off, and it didn't work. So then we came in, and we had been able to put together some loans and so forth. And there's a whole story that I won't go into. But we're able to then come to the sisters, and we brought in a couple of our aldermen, and you weren't there at the time, but a couple of city officials and our leaders of Bethel New Life, and we went down to the sisters' mother house and said, you can't let this thing die in the community, so you need to sell it to us, but you need to finance it for us. So the audacity of telling the sisters that we'll buy it, but you have to finance it.
Damn.
And so they did. But again, that just took good.
But who's the sisters? You keep saying the sisters. I'm sorry.
The sisters, Ancilla Domini, the sisters of Jesus. Ancilla Domini was the name of the order.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the hospital itself was owned by
St. Anne's.
Okay. What? Okay.
And so the headline, and so then when we closing on it, the headline in the Crane Chicago paper was, "It will take a miracle."
Oh wow!
Because what do you do with a closed down inner city hospital?
Yeah. Wow.
And it took 7 or 8 years and $20 million by the time it was all the different pieces were together to slowly do piece by piece to rehab it into elderly independent living and assisted living and adult daycare, and the chapel converted to this cultural and performing arts center, and et cetera, et cetera.
Is it still up now?
Yeah.
And what's the building called? Is it still called St. Anne's?
No, Beth Ann.
Oh, that's the Beth. Oh, okay. So that is the place where Beth Ann is now.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And there are other big buildings in the community and on the west side. You know, adaptive reuse, it's called. Of figuring out how to put some of these buildings that are still like they built hospitals in those days with terrazzo floors and you know, that didn't just die, that didn't just crumble. And so there are some other buildings that could be restored and redone into new things.
You know what? We're going to take a pause at this moment, and we need to run the ad for...
Yeah. All right, so y'all, if y'all haven't gone by 5713 West Chicago Avenue, you need to stop by, man. Fresh fruits and vegetables. That's going to be the center of the first Black-owned grocery store here in the Austin community, owned by a Black woman, man. So we still in... Women's History Month. That deserves a clap, salute for that. And so what we want to do right now for you is just play the ad, man. You know what I mean? If you've never been, you need to go. So I'm going to go ahead and run that clip for you.
Have you been to the Seoul City Community Market yet? It's a pop-up grocery store over on the west side of Chicago in the Austin neighborhood. They have local vendors selling fresh fruit, vegetables, meats, prepared foods, and honestly more things than I can even say in this video. What's also pretty cool is they accept link card and they also match up to $25 of link card purchases. They even have a free photo booth, which honestly I think is a really nice touch. It's over on 5713 West Chicago Avenue, right at the corner of Chicago Avenue and Waller. Click on over to our profile for more info.
All right, y'all. 5713 West Chicago Avenue. Right now, still doing pop-ups every Saturday, Sunday. Saturdays from 9 to 3. Sundays from 10 to 3. Go get your fresh fruits and vegetables. Again, link match up to $25. They have various vendors in there. Chicago's own Jermaine Nellum has very great skin creams and CBD tablets, you know, for my people that find it difficult to sleep. You know, obviously the picture booth is just a, you know, nice little touch, man. But there's a bunch of things going on. If you find yourself on Chicago Avenue, stop by either Saturday or Sunday.
Shout out to Leeds.
Absolutely.
So Mary, this is the part of your history that I it's kind of vague to me. I understand you had some history with the Black Panther Party in Chicago. Is that true or not?
That's not true.
That's not true. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds interesting.
Well, what was it? What was it? Was there any particular group that other street organization that you?
Yeah, the Garfield organization, Doug Andrews.
Doug Andrews.
Mo Henry.
And Ma Henry, but Doug Andrews was, he was probably one of the instigators on the Black Panther Party, but he was a significant organizer
Yeah.
on the West Side.
You know him too? Who is that? Tiny, you know him?
Oh, yeah, I knew Doug Andrews, Fats Crawford.
Yeah, that's right.
All of them, yeah.
All of them, yeah.
Okay. So
And that was how the first riot in West Garfield took place. Was they had been organizing, Garfield organization had been organizing around the fire station because there were only white firemen in the middle of West Garfield Park at that fire station, and they had been circling it and picketing and so forth, and it was kind of, and the firemen inside were all white, and they were kind of anxious, and I think they must have been drinking. I don't know what, but when in that hot August afternoon, when a call for a fire truck to came, and the fire truck came out, and a woman was with a child standing at the bus station right there, and when the truck came out, the hook and ladder truck, the guy was not on the end of it. And so when it came out, it swung and it hit her and it killed her.
Wow.
And that was the straw that broke the back, and that was how the riot started.
Wow.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one of the fellows is still Doug's buddy.
Yes, he's still around.
He's still here. He's still around.
Yeah.
I'll think of his name in a moment. But yeah, he's still. And of course, that's when Eugene Fincham and Jim Montgomery ended up getting well known as lawyers.
Oh wow!
Because Doug and I'll think of his name. They were accused of treason.
Yes.
They were arrested, accused of treason.
Oh wow!
And Fincham just always jokingly says, I told the judge, them boys, treason is when you're trying to overthrow the government. Some boys weren't trying to overthrow no government, they just set some buildings on fire. And so, but they were overcharged.
So former judge Eugene
Fincham and Jim Montgomery were
attorney,
the lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of things were just going on. Our Corinthian Temple Church of God in Christ was very involved with the Garfield organization. As a matter of fact, Bishop Allison was the chairman at one time. Well, they're there now. The Allison Foundation right there on Washington Boulevard.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the church is just a couple doors down.
Washington, what?
It's 4,400.
Oh, you're talking about the big stone on the south side of the street, down the street from Hatch's church.
That's further down.
It's
Further
further
down
east.
than that.
Oh, further east.
The church is on the other side. It's on the north side.
Oh, it is. It's on the north side.
They're getting ready to build some affordable housing. They've broken ground, and so it's coming.
The church is going to build some housing?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Nice.
So it's near Keeler in Washington.
Yeah.
On the north side of the street. Wow. I have to look for it.
And the church sits back in the. It's not right on the street. It's back in kind of a yard.
I'm just thinking all these years. I just remember that I thought it was a church on the south side of the street, just a little bit east of Reverend Hatch's church, the old St. Mel, and I just thought there was a row of buildings over there, but I don't know. Maybe I passed them and missed them all these years. Missed it.
So you started Chicago right before the riot, or right day before the riots.
Right.
Preceding that, where you coming from? What's the history?
I grew up. My dad was a pastor.
Okay.
And I spent my high school years in Washington D.C.
Mm.
And my dad's church was the first mainline church to integrate, and that was long before the Supreme Court decision.
Mm.
And I attended a school in D.C. that was, again, when the Supreme Court desegregation decision happened, my high school had been, and I wasn't in high school yet, but the high school had been an all-white school. And so the desegregation issue used Washington, D.C. as a pilot model for integrating the schools.
Mm.
And so I grew up in that setting. And then when I went off to college in Minnesota, and then when I graduated from college, I taught school in Tanzania.
Wow.
For 2 years, and that was at the time of independence. So I was there for the independence celebration.
I don't know what that is. What is that?
They were a British colony.
Oh.
And they were granted independence.
Oh.
And we were there for the independence celebration. And Nyerere was the first president of Tanzania.
Wow.
Julius Nyerere.
Julius Nyerere, yeah.
Mm.
And so I had 2 years on the slopes of Mount Kilimanjaro, teaching students and girls.
That's crazy.
And
that's crazy.
And had a chance, because it was a brand new country. Mm-hmm. So I had a chance to be a part of nation building. That the young women who were in the school that I was teaching at became the leaders of the women's stuff.
Wow!
Because there were so few women that had a secondary school, and I brought them through the exams.
Wow!
For that, and so still am in touch with a number of the women today.
Wow! Are you? Where else you been? You're a world traveler.
I am.
Okay. So what's some other places you've been?
Well, I was just reading the book about the woman who'd been the ambassador in Ukraine at the time, right at the time of the elections. Mm-hmm. And Trump, and Giuliani had messed around there, and Trump had demanded that she leave Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she was talking about her earlier internship in Moscow. Mm-hmm. And then I remembered as a woman when I was I spent a year in Germany studying, that going to Moscow, going to Russia with a student delegation, so it brought back all of these memories. And I went I found out that I could bring, I went in Berlin and got some Russian Bibles, and had a false bottom in my suitcase. and brought them into Russia.
CIA Mary.
And
For real.
and
That's
met
what's
with
up.
the Baptist, the only church they were allowing in those days. It was illegal to have a Russian Bible.
Wow.
And brought them in a basket or something, and met with the pastor in that Baptist church.
Yeah.
And kicked the bag of them over to him. So when I left, I didn't have the bag with me.
Yeah.
And they got the Bibles.
Man, that's
And I
crazy.
had forgotten all about that.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Oh, that's,
In Moscow.
if you forget
At
that,
a
wow.
time when no one could go in the.
I know.
Jesus Christ. Man, if you forget that, your spy adventures, man, to go through the roof.
You know, we were just talking. She was telling me about her sister in Stuttgart, Germany, and I was telling her about the time I was in Stuttgart. But Mary, yeah, you have been quite a few places. I'm sure Congressman has also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been.
You were in Tanzania, weren't you?
I sure was.
Yeah.
We
Wow.
went to 75. Mother Nairi and Jomo Kenyatta both had great careers. Matter of fact, I often quote Nair. He said something to a graduating class one year, and he said that those of you who have been beneficiaries of this commodity that we call education are like a warrior in an African village where they are about to starve. He said that they gave the warriors little food that they had so that he could go to a neighboring village and bring back help. He said if the warrior takes the food and does not return, then he is a traitor.
Yes.
Said, but if he takes the food and brings back help to his starving brothers and sisters, then he's a hero. And I need you students to take this commodity of education and go back into the villages and back into the places of great need and be the hero.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Oh man, that's powerful.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I feel in some respects that other cultures and countries around the world value education a lot more than we do here today. You know, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you know, we are constantly becoming, and I think it appears as though we take some things for granted, that we're not really taking them for granted, but we're not putting enough effort on making sure that as many people are the recipients as there need to be. I mean, I'm amazed. There are still children growing up who can't hardly read.
Yeah, still.
Yeah,
right,
still.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, African American boys seem to have more difficulty with that than a lot of other population groups. And I think we have not gone beyond this period when you could earn a livelihood without having a great deal of technical education and knowledge.
Yeah.
And if your back was strong, you could manage to do all right. That day is gone. I mean, absolutely. I can recall when guys could make a living in the alley repairing automobiles. You know, you just
Right.
jack them all down the alley. There was alley mechanics who did all right. Can't do that anymore.
Why? So ordinance against that too now?
No, you can't do it because you gotta have a computer.
Technology.
You got the technology.
True enough.
You can't just take your screwdriver.
True indeed.
STEM all day, every day.
That's true indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even speaking to that a lot in warehouses and things like that too. You know, they keep talking about like a worker shortage, or even the shortage of the ability to raise people up and leveling is due in part to skills, not having the skill. There's such a big skill gap between a person being able to work on the floor and then control the machines. You know, and it's by far leaving our people in the dust because they're the ones that lack those traditional skills, and the opportunities are endless for us. You know, and you know, we keep talking about decent wages and how to make a living, and it really exists. It exists now, but at the same time, you got to be willing to go put forth that effort. You got to go build those skills.
Right.
You know.
But I had a brother who died who had two 18-wheel trucks when he died, and he could hardly read right.
Mm.
But he somehow or another he started driving log trucks when he was about 16 years old, and that's all he ever did. And then he went from the log trucks to the other trucks, but he could barely read and write. He had difficulty reading and writing, but somehow or another he learned he could take these trucks apart.
I bet.
He got himself an SBA loan.
Wow.
And I ran into a guy who was down in Arkansas one time doing something, giving a speech at a conference. The guy came and said, "I helped your brother get his truck."
Wow.
I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I helped Benny get his truck." He said, I worked for the SBA. And I don't know how he managed to do it, but he did. And his grandson now, because he taught his grandson how to do it, and his grandson now have the trucks. He left it to his grandson.
Mm.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah, it is. Anybody on Zoom want to jump in?
Is Mary Nelson still there?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. You can't.
Mary, do
Yeah.
you remember Reverend Bevel and the Union to End Slum?
Yeah, I'm gonna just on the screen on screen share.
Reverend Bevel?
Make sure it's on screen share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
At
Because
the,
I
no,
was thinking
at the
when
top with the
you
Zoom.
were doing some great things, and then Bevel working with the Westside organization, you know, he had those Barbara Dean rights courts built. Just thinking of things that were done during that time.
Yes, right.
Oh, the Zoom dropped it?
Meredith Gilbert and his brother and those guys came all the way down from down where the Westside organization were out to North Lawndale.
Right.
And they were part of the original organizing of the Lawndale People's Planning and Action
Oh, wow.
Conference,
Okay. Yeah.
LPPAC.
Right. I thought it would be good, since this is the last day of last week of the Women's Month.
Mm-hmm.
It would be good to think about some of the women, the strong, the West Side had some strong women.
Absolutely.
Made it happen. And clearly Leola Span is one of them. Yeah. But I remember way back, there was a woman named Ma Fletcher.
Oh my God.
In Lawndale. And Ma Fletcher, and she was a big woman. I mean, tall and just had a big personality as well. And I remember when we were trying, and I worked with her. I was part of her little cadre of folks, and we were trying to get some changes or some responses from the public schools. And Manfred Bird was the superintendent then, or assistant superintendent or whatever. And so what Ma Fletcher did, and he was the only black guy in the administration. And so what Ma Fletcher did is she said, "Okay, come on, we're going to eat." And we ate some greasy chicken. And so we smelled like chicken, and we had chicken all over us and so forth. And we walked into Manfred Bird's office telling him what we wanted and what needed to happen. And he was so embarrassed that he shooed us into his office and kept it so nobody else would see, because Ma Fletcher had her big floppy hat on, and
So
when
Manfred, who's Manfred?
he was superintendent of schools.
Okay.
Huh?
She dressed up like Mom's neighbor.
I know it.
That's
And we
right.
got what we came for. But she was so smart about doing those kinds of things.
She's from Lawndale, right?
She
Yeah.
lived at 1907 South Alaska. We used to meet there all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we'd also have the superintendent
of that
school,
district.
that district.
Yeah. What
In
was
the
his
meeting.
name? Yes.
And we'd figure out how we was going to march on him the next day.
Right.
And he'd be telling us how to do it.
Wow.
Joe Rosen.
Joe Rosen. That
Joe
was it.
Rosen,
But
yeah.
I'm thinking of some of the other women. So clearly, so Ma Fletcher was one, but Nancy Jefferson,
Right, that's Jefferson.
and who just what was the Midwest Council?
Mid-Austin.
No,
Midwest.
Midwest Council, and all of the things. And she was a formidable opponent if she got her hackles up in terms of doing it.
Belle Whaley.
Belle
who-
Whaley
who
in
brought
Lawndale.
us over to your place one night, and we had Muhammad Ali
Yes,
there.
and
Smith
yes,
got into an argument.
right,
Wow.
and Muhammad Ali, yes, and we had about 10 of us,
Yeah.
right, in there with him,
Jeez.
and who am I thinking of else? And Lucy Jean Lewis
Lucy Jean.
was a pistol,
Right.
all right, and you know, and she wasn't very involved in politics, wasn't she?
Yeah, she's one of the first people who ran as an independent for alderman in the 28th Ward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
She and Fred Peavy, who was actually Bobby Rush's half brother, they were both independents and ran down in 28 long before anybody could get elected.
Wow.
Right. Tough ladies. And didn't accept a no, you know, would just keep pushing and stayed at the table and help me think, Congressman, of some of the others. Oh, here in Austin, in addition.
Can I just say, and Jean Lewis got me a job at Bobby Rush.
Is that right? All right.
Right.
Yes, Lucy Jean Lewis.
Yeah.
And who was the other one aside from Leola here on the west side?
Illa Daggett.
Illa Daggett.
Yes.
Yes.
Eleanor Daggett. And we call her Illa. Her name was
Illinois Daggett. Yeah.
Illinois?
That was her name.
Right.
Illinois Daggett.
Yeah. And then she wasn't black, but the tough lady was Gail Sincata.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
tough lady, and she the whole Community Reinvestment Act stuff was.
I remember Gail.
Her organizing.
What was the group called? The
National People's Action.
National People. We used to go there for meetings. Miss Span was sending the organizers over there. You better bring a gas mask because everybody. Gail smoked.
Yeah.
She was a
smoker.
It was like I'm like, man, this is a whole room full of smokers.
Oh yeah, well, people used to smoke.
Yeah, for real. That was that day, huh?
And so I mean, you know, there's a whole that was the spirit and the hope of things because these women hung in there.
Yeah.
And when they got their teeth into something, they would call up and say, "And you better be here." And we all, you know, me as a younger person at that point, I'm coming.
Yeah.
You know.
I like this. I like this segue. Younger person,
Right.
because you know, I one of the things Steve and I was just talking about the other day is how when we in our communities say young people, I think it misses the point that young people are my age. I'm 34. I'm a young person.
Yes.
Yeah,
You know, and people often and I feel like I'm overlooked, you know, because I of course I'm middle aged, I suppose. Hopefully I live till I'm 80, 90, you know, so then my middle age could be 10 years from now. But still, you know, how old were you when you were involved? And in that time, where people looked when the term young people was used, were they looking? Because I feel now we're looking for 13 to 18 and 20. You know, some of these people that are still want to have fun. They just want to enjoy life where they are right now. When they say young people in your day, were they talking about people that age, or were they talking about people 30s? You know, older 29. You know what I mean? 20s.
I was around 25.
25. Okay,
Yeah.
that's why I consider 25 and up to be a young person. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but I think there are pockets of, you look at today and you see some of these young people, the young people from the school in Florida where the Kim and Douglas, what was the name of the school, where the shootings took place.
Okay.
And those young people organized, you know, they really organized. And I was just listening to the guy who was the key organizer of the students, and really tried to get some changes in the state legislature and in Florida around voting and around other things. He's now at Harvard University, a sophomore.
What's my man? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
the young. I can't remember his name, but I know the young kid.
There are high school students. There are who are really doing some stuff, and who can be challenged. And I think the role of us, of myself as an elder, is to support and to encourage them to go on and to support and to help bring some resources to them. Okay, but to say they're going to do it differently.
Right. Exactly.
Okay?
Absolutely.
It has to be different in these days.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
But I think we've got to more intentionally, as an older person, we've got to more intentionally do that, and support and help hold up and give credence to some of the stuff they're doing.
Right.
And there's a great school down at 800 South Wells, the Leadership Academy, that start teaching kids when they're 3rd and 4th grade.
Wow.
Issues and activism, and teaching them that they can influence. As a matter of fact, there were some big potholes in front of their school, and they went to the alderman and did all the stuff and got them filled and wrote letters. 2 young African American women started the school. They operate the school. It's a private school. It's not a charter school. It's a private. It's actually LaShawn's daughter went there. Yeah, LaShawn's daughter went there because that's who hipped me to the school.
All right.
And I've gone and visited with them and
800
spoken. Well, same building that VON is in.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Floor of the building.
Okay. We know where that's at. Sure.
And you think of the kids in Lawndale who worked on changing the name of that Douglas Park into the Frederick Douglass. And it took them 2 or 3 years of work to get that change happening. I mean, we don't know about them, but we need to help highlight that and figure out, you know, I bet here in Austin, if we really looked for things, we could find some neat kids doing some neat things.
Yeah, there's amazing kids doing a lot of things. I just think too often when we, like I say, we use young person and things like that, my class kind of gets overlooked a bit, you know.
Well, there are young people. I mean, I went to at Michelle Clark 2 or 3 weeks ago. A young fellow who does the football with the Chargers, and they've won national championship. He took his team to Texas a few weeks ago to play, and so he's doing an outstanding job with that. And then there's the guy over in Lawndale, Coach Rice. They've organized. I've gone over and visited with them, and they've had 200-300 kids and their parents at banquets right there at Sinai. They usually have it at the Sinai Institute. Right. And Coach Rice is doing just a great job with that. I think he now is actually on Michael Scott's staff.
Oh, really?
I think Michael
All right.
said, let me hire this guy.
That's good.
So we kind of come to, let's talk a little bit more, Mary, like what you've been doing lately. Because I know you told me about you're involved with certain, what was it, you're on the board or something? Or?
Well, I retired from Bethel New Life a long time ago, and subsequent to that, I've done some I do teaching and so forth. But I also then spent 3 years as the executive director of the Parliament of the World's Religions.
Okay.
And
The Parliament of the World's Religions,
which is an international organization, and had a chance to do some interesting things all around the world, and to be the one responsible for a parliament of 10,000 people in
The world.
no, it was in the United States, and do some real interesting things with that. And then I did a short-term interim executive director of the Christian Community Development Association, which is a national organization, and Lawndale Christian Church, and Coach
Wayne
Gordon, and so forth. So I've had, but I am currently in, so, and I do, I'm a part of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute, which believes that communities, that we have to look at what's good and what's working in communities first before we start with the needs. And you take that and you really believe in a bottoms-up kind of philosophy, and do asset mapping and so forth and so on. And so I teach, right now I'm teaching a group of African-American pastors in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
By Zoom, by
Right.
an asset-based development, and helping them look at how their churches can be partners and do more in their own communities, but in creative kinds of ways. But also I'm involved with the Poor People's Campaign.
Mm-hmm. What is that? What's the Poor People's Campaign?
Pastor William Barber, who is this really dynamic African-American preacher, but organizer. So I'm going tomorrow with a group of people to Madison, Wisconsin, as one of the preliminary events of June 18th in Washington, D.C., Poor People's Campaign. It's the renewal of the things that King started, but with a clear agenda that includes includes a 5-pronged thing, which includes both the environmental thing and the militarism of our country, and a whole variety of things. And it's saying that the people who are most impacted, the 140 million people living in poverty, ought to be the ones who take the lead, and we as somebody, I'm alongside of them, but not, the leadership comes out of that. And so there's a lot of good things going on. And then, of course, Steve and I are part of Westside Rising.
Right.
Which is, I think our best effort there is trying to connect each other so that we're sharing and not competing. Mm-hmm. That we're able to come together and say collectively, here's some things that need to happen. But if you're doing your things, we don't have to all be doing the same things. There are for sure moments when we need to come together, and that gives us a vehicle for doing that.
Absolutely.
Is Reverend Barber going to be at the thing in Wisconsin?
He was supposed to be there, but instead now Reverend Theo Harris, the co-director of the Poor People's Campaign, is going to be there. They've got one that ended up in somewhere in the South the same day, so he couldn't be in both places.
Yeah, he is. I have spent several different times.
Yes.
I spent one Sunday.
Oh, wow.
With him, we did 9 events.
Jesus Christ.
On one Sunday?
One Sunday. And I got back to Chicago in time to do something that I had to do here.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so well organized,
Yes.
coordinated, and it was just like clockwork.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
So anyone out there, you have any questions for Mary or Congressman?
Well, I would like to say something. Mary Nelson will always be my hero. When it was cold out, Miss Jacobs asked me to come to a rally. I think about Black Workers Matter.
Yes.
Right. And so when I was over there, Mary Nelson was over there carrying a sign, you know. And so that was inspiration for me. You know, she's still out there fighting. And Mary, keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely. How about you, Barry? I haven't heard anything from you all night.
Hi everyone. Teddy said it beautifully. Mary, Congressman Davis, you two are what we need more of. Elders really leading by example and inspiring people and helping move us in a positive direction.
All right, Barry.
Well, I think it's time for us elders, I can only speak for myself, to step back and to be an encourager and an ally and a promoter of the next generation.
Yeah.
Because I think things need to happen differently then, and I'm happy to add my little 2 cents worth. But I really feel the need for us encouraging the next generation.
I was saying something with Elon Musk, who's probably one of the most intelligent guys we got in this day and age. And he was
the richest too.
Absolutely. But one of the things that he said that caught my attention was that we're moving in a space where we live in a gerontocracy. Where he was saying that in no way should our country be led by people that's not at least 10 to 20 years away from the target that they are leading, because in most instances that takes you away from true understanding of the plight, and you have your own thoughts about what you think should be going on versus what is actually going on and how can you fix it. And so I thought that was something important, because it to me, it truly speaks to what we have going on in the nation. There's this huge disconnect between the generations, and I think part of it is that in some respects there comes a time where you have to start to take a step back and say, you know what, my place would be better utilized in this capacity, a mentorship role, a teaching role, advisory role, you know what I mean? And I think I don't think that's wrong,
Well, you're right. Like they say, each one, reach one, teach one. However you can. I mean, even at your age, we had this discussion that most younger people, when we say younger, meaning 20 and below or 25 and below, they don't listen to older people or elders. They typically will listen to that age group, 18 to 40, 18, not even say 40, I say 18 to 30.
Probably, yeah.
That's it. And those are the ones that have to kind of reach back and put that message in their view. But I do get what you're saying. There is a big dynamic now where people are getting older, and now young means 30 to 40 something. It's like, what?
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's like, what?
I don't consider old till 70. I think
it's
so.
Amazing. It's amazing to hear that and even say that young is 30 to 25.
But it always had been. Why did we determine that you were old when you made 30?
Well, I think it had a lot to do with the length of people were living.
Yeah, that was how many years ago was that though?
Right.
Yeah,
Social Security was made when people were dying at 65, right? Like nobody's dying at 60. We have been dying at 65 for 100 years. Man. Like what are we talking about?
Yeah, but I think
So yeah, it's time to rewrite the rules.
Let me tell you, I have actually I went to one woman's funeral. We had it out at the House of Hope. She was 114.
Man, blessed.
I went to another woman's funeral. I went to 2 birthday parties last year. Well, two years ago. They were both 108.
Oh, wow.
One died not long ago. The other woman still is actively engaged, lives in Maywood, Illinois. Miss Susie Lewis. And I spoke with her a few months ago. The other woman is out in South Suburban Cook County, and they had a thing for her in one of the villages at the village hall. And people are living longer.
Right. Yeah, they are.
I mean,
yeah, they are.
That's right.
And actually, on today, I missed it. I was supposed to come to Naperville because the lady who's gone to all of the continents, we helped her get her passports and visas and stuff together. And her family was celebrating because she just went to Antarctica.
Wow.
She went to Antarctica?
Yeah.
Woo.
Wow.
And she's been to all of the continents.
Wow.
She's been, and she and her daughter had invited me to come to their little party they were going to have. I could, but people living longer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they just.
We talk about the octogenarians and above, and look at Miss Drummond, Mr. Ferber right here, Block Club president for over 30 years, right here on Menard and Division.
Miss Drummond, 101.
Going on this year, I think she will be 101. Last year was 100 year.
Man.
Yeah. So I mean, we're talking about people that are living longer.
Yeah.
Which kind of in my mind moves the age of being young, and he said he's middle aged. I'm like, well, what am I if he's middle aged?
Well, that's what they used to consider me. I don't consider myself. I don't consider myself middle aged, but I think that's the view that has been in place for so long that you would consider a 30-year-old man middle aged. But that's not true.
You're young.
I'm very much so young. I tell you myself. No, don't put that on me. And it was funny. I was teaching at Austin High School though, and it was so crazy how they were calling me OG, and you know what I mean. I was like, dog, I'm not there yet, man. What are you talking about? So
we had Maxine Waters with us this afternoon, and Maxine has been in office for 46 years.
And she's what, 80?
I think she's maybe close to 85.
Is that right? Wow. Well, Nancy Pelosi's no young thing.
No, Nancy, I think is 81.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think so.
Wow.
Well,
Man,
the president isn't all that young.
yeah, I don't mean no disrespect, but come on, man, come on. Like, come on. But we got some young people in there. So, and I'm knowing that they are taking them by the wing. You mentioned Nancy Pelosi and AOC. So you mentioned how, and I get, as a young person, how we ready to go. You know what I mean? But you got to be patient, and you got to learn, and you got to sit amongst the elders and soak up the wisdom and the knowledge and the game from them, and that's good.
I think it emerged. When I was 26, I had my first leadership job. I became executive director of something called the Greater London Conservation Commission. It wasn't no big deal. I just, people asked me to consider it, and I considered it, Miss Belle Whaley. Miss
Belle Whaley, yeah.
Belle Whaley was she's supposed to have been working for me, but I was working for her. And many of the individuals that I know took leadership roles long before they were 30 years old. I mean, you don't really have to be aged to do these things.
That's right.
And
That's
there
right.
are a lot of young people who are doing incredible leadership things.
Yeah.
Just doing them and creating things.
Right.
I mean,
in new ways, yeah.
yeah, teenagers with their own businesses,
Yeah.
teenagers
Yeah.
who've written books, teenagers who are plotting and planning. I've got 2 young interns right now. One is at Princeton, just a delightful young fellow, and another one in my office in DC. And they're ready for whatever comes to them. Some of these guys playing athletics, you know, they're early 20 years old, making $100 million.
Man, that's true. Now you remember that.
$100 million contracts.
Big dogs, for real.
Yeah, I remember the day the NBA, you couldn't go straight from high school to the NBA. But that's changed the last 20, 30 years. I mean, Garnett was one, Daryl Hawkins, I think.
And the University of Illinois had a basketball team this year. They've restored basketball.
There you go. So anyone have any more comments, questions for the Congressman and Mary? Because we're about to close that out. Because we're at the top of the hour now.
Well, I tell you, I've got some good information for especially not-for-profits.
Good.
We are easing back into the earmark arena. I mean, we did last year, and we were able to get 10 community projects that got decent pieces of money.
Wow.
$4.2 million worth.
Wow.
Which wasn't so bad. But this year we're going to do 15 projects. I mean, we did 10. This year we're going to be able to submit 15. So I am announcing that the season is open for that.
All right.
People who do proposals need to get them in by April the 12th.
April 12th. Woo.
Yeah, it's a quick turnaround. And we can submit 15 projects. And I'm trying to make sure that every not-for-profit only not-for-profit and government entities are eligible. And we're going to have a little training piece for people to view on Wednesday at 5:30. I don't have that information, but if they want to just call my office, people can tell them how to get on the Zoom and pick up all the information that they need.
Wednesday at 5:30?
Yeah. They got to follow the guidelines pretty directly, because these all go to the Appropriations Committee, and they view everything and determine whether or not the criteria is met. And then they will decide whether or not to fund those projects. So I got 15 slots.
Okay.
And they have to be well done and well written. It's going to be very competitive. Because some of the guys are big guys who
Yeah, of course,
Who got great writers, and they got people who do development, and they know how to do that. But just get your proposal in, and we'll get it in.
And they're gonna be due, so they're gonna be due April, what'd you say?
April the 12th
12th.
is the deadline for submission.
Okay, good.
And also, it's income tax time.
That's right.
And we want to make sure that all of the people who qualify for the child tax credits and the earned income tax credit, be sure. I mean, if you're low income, if you did nothing but make $200, you can file an income tax return and possibly get some money. I mean, just make sure. We got a lot of places that will help you if you don't know how to do it. The closest one around here is that Kingdom Baptist Church, and that's at 301 North Central. They will give you all the help you need. There are a lot of other places, but the one around here is Kingdom Baptist Church. And they're at Triton College, they're at Church of God on Drexel, they're in Uptown, they're in Gage Park, they're at 350 North Orleans, Roosevelt University, Holy Name Cathedral. Actually, I have a list with all the VITA sites, and that just means voluntary tax assistance places. It's all free.
Nice.
And if you can't remember any of all that, just call my office, 773-533-7520. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful tax benefits.
I hear you. All right then. Anything in closing, Mary, that you'd like to leave us with? For National Women's Month.
Well, don't underestimate the power of women. I think we are, if nothing else, we're persistent.
There you go.
We hang with it until something does happen. So don't underestimate us.
That's for sure.
All right. Anyone out there who would go around and ask you if you have any closing remarks? How about Tamika? We haven't heard from you.
Yeah, no, I just been sitting here listening. The one thing that sticks out for me is that every week we say, well, we should have this history documented. All we gotta do is write it down. We don't even have to write it down. We can just interview them and put it on honor, and there we have the story that you guys want to have.
I agree.
So
I agree.
if you know, like I said, I would love to do stuff like that. I know that I have a lot of stuff on my plate, so, but I would take a couple of hours a week out just to do that for you guys. It would be fun for me. I would love to listen to history and stories from back in the days before I was even born. So.
That's a fact. You know, everything is recorded though. It's on YouTube. I said everything is recorded though because it's on YouTube. And yeah, so with the Otter, like Otter AI, I have that. So it's really, just popping it on and just letting it go.
How about
what parts you want to put in, take out.
Right.
Just take your time.
Okay. How about you, Miss Houston? Are you there? Ella Houston.
Yeah, I'm here. Baby sick, so I missed quite a bit.
That's
So
okay.
these kids going crazy when I get busy. But perhaps I missed the introduction. Dr. Mary Nelson?
Yes, from Bethel New Life. I don't know if you recall.
Huh?
You don't remember Miss Nelson from Bethel New Life?
No. Is she from Gospel New Life?
Bethel New Life, the Beth Ann building down the street.
Oh, Bethel.
Yeah.
No, I never met her.
All these years, I'm gonna fill you in.
Okay, hi, doctor.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. Glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
She and Miss Pan were friends. Well, obviously you knew Miss Pan. So. But I'll have to introduce you to her one day. And last but not least, who is that? Venus, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Any closing remarks?
Hi, Dr. Nelson. It was a pleasure listening to you. I have been hearing about you for many, many, many years, and I will be glad and honored to meet you one day, and which I know that's going to cross my path.
All right.
And also, you know, I hear you talking about Bethel Life. That's where I have my service at on Sundays. That's where me and my congregation's been meeting up there for like 8 years now. They rent out to pastors on Sundays, and I'm so glad that we moved there because before we came there, we were paying like $1,500 a month, you know, where we was at. But now we only pay like $240 a month, so we're saving a lot of money. But in the meantime, it will be an honor to grace your presence whenever I meet you.
All right, look forward to that.
All right. And that's anyone else before we go? Remarks, because we're about to close it out.
I didn't mean to ignore our Danny. Hey, Danny.
Okay, how are you doing?
Yeah, glad to see you.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, you take care.
I think I heard from Venus about 5 times this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Every place I've been.
Yeah.
Venus
Oh,
was
yeah.
out marching up and down Madison Street yesterday.
Oh, wow.
She was at the breakfast too.
Okay.
She was at the breakfast
That's
too.
an open water horse.
For sure. So yeah, she's another woman that's really making it happen. In fact, she's getting inducted to the Civil Rights Hall of Fame this upcoming Friday. So yeah, she's another woman, Venus, that's making things happen. So
Yes, I am.
yeah,
That's,
absolutely.
that's what I'm getting ready for. I'm taking my hair down so I can get it done.
There you go.
So that's what I'm for.
DeAndre, really quick.
You know what? For me, I relish the opportunity to sit amongst the legends. You know what I mean? Congressman Davis, definitely a legend. Dr. Mary Nelson, a legend. You know, Steve, legends. Man, these individuals are pillars of the community. Love hearing from them. Love soaking up game, learning from them. You know what I mean? And sometimes it may come off as me being a young person. Look, I'm real headstrong. You know what I mean? And I'ma always speak up the way that I think I'd like to articulate how I feel about things, but nonetheless. Oh yeah, my auntie Juanita Rudis, absolutely.
All right.
My auntie Juanita
Give
Rudis.
her my greetings.
I will. Hey, you know what? Every day this week, somebody done told me to tell my auntie, hey, you know what I mean? Yep. So my auntie. So absolutely, man. And we tried to get her. I was trying to get her on. I want to bring her this month too. So, we're going to get her to come in and talk about her life too. So, but yeah, that's all. I just really wanted to give, I think it's important to give flowers. Man, I think it's important to give flowers. But other than that, man, like we do this thing, man, every Sunday, 6 to 8. We appreciate y'all for tuning in like you do. You got various ways of interacting with the show. We got the Facebook, the Zoom, the YouTube. If you're on the YouTube or the Facebook, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. That way we can see you interact with the show. We can bring up your comments and everything. The Zoom, y'all already know, man. Y'all just jump in when y'all jump in, and we appreciate that. Yeah, and so we'll be back next week. And in closing, I just like to say, listen, we got plenty seats open at the table. It's time to come on and join home. Thank you for allowing us to welcome you to Northwest Austin Council. Have a good night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Hopefully we get Willie Wilson. We're supposed to be reaching out to Dr. Willie Wilson.